In the one photograph, I saw like 7 things that made me think, this is a guy who knows he's in front of millions of people. And that's a different motive than somebody who's in front of them because they are working around the clock trying to build a company that to them is their vision.
Right, which is
it's
Elon.
a good point.
Elon sleeps in the factory, you know.
Exactly. Like he's not in it. Like Elon is not in it for the money. I'm not saying he doesn't like money or doesn't want money or doesn't want profit, but it's the why, right? His why is transformation, is getting to space. Like his why is what inspires him. And I just wonder, like, I wasn't paying attention to this guy for Nikola before, but I just wonder, did you come away inspired from his conversations?
Welcome back to the SteadyTrade Podcast, everyone. I am Tim Bohen here with Kim and Steven. We've got the whole team back together again. Going to be talking about an interesting topic that isn't necessarily penny stock related, though oddly enough, this might be a multi-billion-dollar market cap stock, but I think the CEO, the founder, and probably many other people in the organization may have somehow got a hold of the penny stock playbook from some 50-cent OTC pink sheet stock and learned some of the tricks of self-promotion and hyperbole and marketing, etc. So that being said, we'll get right into it. But what we're talking about today is Nikola. NKLA is the ticker symbol. We're going to be talking a lot about Trevor Milton, AKA Elizabeth Holmes. If you're curious, as a book recommendation, a lot of you guys ask for book recommendations. Bad Blood, about the Theranos saga, about Elizabeth Holmes. I could not put that. I was like mad when I put that book down. I believe I tweeted about it. I think I read that book in like a day and a half. I was traveling, but still like a 300-page book, and I read it in a day and a half or 2 days. But so check that out. Very interesting story. But what we're talking about is Nikola Motors. I had my hopes dashed. I was actually all fired up to get a Badger. I mean, legitimately, I think I've talked about it on the podcast. That truck was sexy. So they had this EV truck that was supposed to come out. Now we'll see. A lot has changed in the last couple weeks, but a lot of things to learn from, especially in penny stocks. I mean, these guys took a hot sector. They took a lot of promotion. They even, again, so many things to talk about, to unpack in this story. They even sued Tesla to try and give themselves some credence. So much to go over. And really the biggest point we're probably going to talk about is be skeptical, do your research. Don't be a bag holder. I'm getting tagged on Twitter all the time by people who are like, oh, they'll turn it around. And I'm like, oh, they're not going to. So anyway, welcome, Kim, Steven. What's your thoughts on Mr. Trevor Milton, who oddly enough, in classic penny stock fashion, what's he do? Goes out and buys the most expensive house in his home estate, or his home state. He has the most expensive house in Utah. And I bet you, there's a lot of money in Utah. There's a lot of big ranches. That's if you got the most expensive house in Utah, you're up there, So.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I just want to take it back a little bit, and because my background's in advertising. So, but the genius in the beginning was where it all starts, and that was in the name. So we all know, well, we don't know, not many people will know, but there was a famous inventor, and he was a Serbian guy, and he was called Nikola Tesla, and he was a mechanical engineer, and from around the 1850s, he made breakthroughs in electrical power. He invented the first alternate current motor. He developed AC generation and transmission technology. Elon Musk, being the guy that he is, just thought, look, I'm going to name Tesla after this great Serbian inventor. And the genius that is Trevor Milton thought, well, if you're going to name him Tesla, I'm going to name my company Nikola, which puts them in direct contrast. And sometimes when you put another company next to a really big leading company, you're automatically kind of associated with that company. And that's what I thought was really interesting. So it all kind of started with the name and the direct comparison to Nikola. But what I found fascinating was the fact that somehow Nikola, without even really selling a product, right? They never had an actual product sold. They never shipped a product or anything like that. They somehow managed to turn up a 20 billion market cap, and things didn't really go wrong from what I understand until this Hindenburg research. There was a report, I think it came out on the 10th or the 11th of September. That was by a guy called Nathan Anderson. And just to give
Which
it back,
a great Wall Street Journal article, we'll make sure to link. And actually, the great thing is, number one, follow Hindenburg Research on Twitter. Great. I've said for years, nothing but respect for those guys. And the interesting thing, we'll link it below too. The report's free, so you can actually read the report that came out a couple weeks ago.
There's a few bits and pieces that I'll mention, but Nathan Anderson, interesting thing about him. I've just got a quick quote from the Wall Street Journal interview. Nathan Anderson said he started publishing skeptical articles about companies in 2017. Within months, he was sued, ran out of money, and couldn't pay his bills. Fielding eviction notices, Mr. Anderson says that he had a pregnant fiancée. He was told to vacate the cramped 2-bedroom apartment in Upper Manhattan. And he said, I was broke and it was bad. So for a guy, there's so much power to these companies. They can tell lies. They can say what they want. I mean, at some point, Trevor Milton was saying that he'd found a cheaper way to manufacture hydrogen. And it was just a cheaper way, but he'd never actually done it. It was just a lie, which is one of the things in the report. And then honest people like Nathan Anderson are having their lives destroyed.
Yep. Yeah, and again, it's funny because and more is coming out every day on Nikola, but and Stephen, I know Kim is familiar. Are you familiar with Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes?
Yeah, no, I was reading.
But it's just, I just didn't know.
Steve Jobs.
For context,
Jobs,
female Steve. She basically made herself into female Steve. She even had a fake voice. That was the wildest thing. She would so anyway, it's just wild because I gotta believe Trevor was whether consciously or subconsciously, because Theranos is the same thing. Remember, their device never did anything. They had all these prototypes. And what's wild, and I'll probably beat this to death, Theranos did this. They used other people's products, repackaged it, called it their own. Nikola did the same thing. They first of all, they rolled the truck downhill, but the vehicles that they did have, the technology that they had, they were just taking the labels off other people's stuff, which is exactly what Theranos did. The one working thing that Theranos came out with was just a rebranded thing. They took the label off a competitor's product and called it their own. That was the only thing that ever worked. So,
but with the whole of Wall Street watching you, how can you tell that many lies in public view and get away with it? But the other thing that was interesting about Trevor Milton was this isn't his first rodeo scamming people. It's not his first rodeo. So Trevor Milton previously had a company called D-Hybrid, and was also a kind of a jaunt into the trucking sector. I can just read this out. It's from the report. So he said D-Hybrid.
Well done. I didn't see so much is coming out.
No, it's interesting.
I didn't realize this. Okay.
So he had a company called D-Hybrid before he started this Nikola, and it says it got off to a good start. D-Hybrid entered into an agreement with a major trucking company called Swift to convert up to 800 trucks at a contract value of 16 million. So I think what they were going to do, it was still in the kind of EV sector, but they were trying to convert it into a more fuel efficient way. Said Swift later sued, alleging that the company delivered only 5 trucks converted, and they didn't work because the technology was wrong. So none of the 5 trucks actually worked. So if it's called D-Hybrid, they probably trying to make hybrid efficient trucks. Didn't work, so he then went on to start Nikola and just told loads of lies. And now he's dead rich.
So I want to ask Kim some questions, but see, it's what's wildest to me, and I'm proud of this. I called it 2 days, and remember, I loved that truck.
Yeah, you wanted the truck.
I wanted one. And when they cut that deal with GM, this was 2 days before Hindenburg's report came out. I'm like, something's weird here. They've duped GM, possibly the worst run company in the world since 1980. But so how did these it's all MBAs at GM. How did they miss that? How did they miss that lawsuit?
Here's the one story I'm going to point to. It's called The Emperor Has No Clothes.
Yep.
Because nobody, when like what Stephen talked about, like this guy got kicked out of his apartment, right? Because there's not that many people that own the real estate, right? Like there's all these big conglomerates now. When the big people who are in power see other people in power or in their same kind of, collection of people doing things, they don't want to miss out. So they do. That's why Bernie Madoff got away with it. That's why, Elizabeth Holmes got away with it.
Well, but that was where I was headed. I wanted to ask you this question. I know at the end of the day, the reason if you're on YouTube, I was doing the whole rubbing coins, but, like back to Theranos, because again, it's the same thing. Like, and I don't remember all the members of the board, but like, how does Henry Kissinger, how does Jim Mattis, okay? Nobody's a bigger fanboy of Jim Mattis, quite possibly one of the greatest generals of the modern era. How does Jim Mattis, he's a general in the Marines for 40 years. He's in the UN. How does he get tricked by Elizabeth Holmes? Because it's not. Is it greed? Because he's just on the board.
I think it's not just greed. I think greed sometimes plays a part. I think it's definitely, yes, you see an opportunity that you think, I'd be crazy to not take it because I can make so much money.
But again, on the board, it's not like he's going to make $1 billion being on the board.
Correct. I think it's the fear of missing out. And in the story of The Emperor Has No Clothes, the reason, even the guys that pretend to make the clothing for the king can't see the clothing, but he doesn't want to look stupid. It all comes down to just our sense of self. And all these smart people, Henry Kissinger's on the board and so-and-so's on the board. And if I'm the one who asks the questions, maybe I look stupid and I don't want to look stupid in front of all these smart people. And so that becomes the kind of attached, nobody wants to look bad. There's not a human being. Even the people with the best self-esteem don't want to look bad or foolish. So you think, oh my gosh, maybe they see something I don't. So I would say it's inner gremlins at work for all these people that make them doubt themselves. How many people came out after the Bernie Madoff scam and said, I always wondered about him. Really? How come you never said it out loud at the cocktail parties or at the Hamptons party? Because they didn't want to be the one guy who didn't see.
Well, and the one guy that, I'll let Stephen come back in, because then you end up the guy from Hindenburg that gets kicked out of his house with a pregnant wife, maybe it's not even a good point. Maybe it's not even greed. Maybe it's just you don't want to be out of the club or whatever. But,
correct.
But go ahead, Stephen.
But by the way, Nathan Anderson is probably a very, very wealthy man now. So the sad times that he went through at the time, I'm sure he's more than made up for, especially because that report, no coincidence, came after a push. If you look at NKLA, because not everyone's perfect, right? NKLA had a push.
Because of the GM deal. Because I skipped over it real quickly, but General Motors gave him $2 billion. He drops the report the next day or 2 days later or whatever.
Yeah, but it's interesting that they dropped the report in, right?
Yeah.
Do you not think they waited for a big company announcement to get the price up, took a big short position, and then dropped the article and says, you're done?
It's funny that Wall Street Journal article you sent, it said short seller torches Nikola. And part of me feels like Nikola torched Nikola. Like, I kind of hate those titles because the guy didn't create product. Like, that's enough. Like, and somebody called you out. That's not their fault. It's your fault for not doing what you were supposed to do.
I would say that Nathan Anderson torched Nikola, but Nikola burnt in their own flames.
Well, right. I mean, because at the end of the day, it's not like he, back to the Hindenburg report, it's not like, it's just facts. It's not like, I mean, it's not, to me, it'd be different if you if you torch them, maybe he just reported the stuff that was happening.
Correct. But you can't blame that on a short seller. It's the fact that somebody said they lifted up the curtain, even in the Wizard of Oz. Remember, was it Toto who pulled the curtain back and was like, "Look, it's an old man on a bad microphone." Like, I mean, I think we want. Also, I think we talked to Dan Crosby in the last podcast, Tim, and he talked about the cognitive cost our brain has. There's so many calories it consumes, so we're always looking for the shortcut. And I think that's what happens too. People want a shortcut.
I just not to get too off tangent, but I've told you that many times, like, I'm sure many of the viewers know we have a YouTube channel, and a lot of the times I'll usually back before coronavirus, I would go shoot for YouTube videos for like 8 hours. And I mean, I'm sitting in a chair, but when I'm done, I can barely walk out of there, and then I sleep for 14 hours. So yeah, I mean, people think about physical calories, but the brain too.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So here are people that are busy, that are important, that probably aren't a lot of boards, or just the investors. Like, it is, I think, honestly, the heart of it is the fear of missing out. And even those people that are potentially looking the other way or having questions, they just don't want to look foolish or look like they're the only one who doesn't get it. But this, I think, is a really great lesson for traders, because that fear of missing out is something they're constantly up against. So this, to me, is a cautionary tale of it's the compare. If you keep comparing yourself to everybody else, well, he sees it, she sees it, why don't I see it? Well, maybe you don't see it because your lens is clear. And don't doubt yourself. Like, I hope the people that didn't believe in this company talk about what it was that they didn't see. Like, what was it? I'm curious, Tim, 2 days before that, it was 2 days before the GM deal.
The day of the GM deal. Because
what was it that struck you?
So I am, and again, I know I'm this all-American guy, but I've been very, growing up in Michigan, I know I'm supposed to be a General Motors guy, but I have hated them from the 80s when they started out. First of all, they General Motors destroyed Detroit. Okay. Detroit was the Silicon Valley of the 50s and the 60s. Okay. Wow. If you look back, architecture, technology, the greatest technology in the world in the post-war era was coming out of Detroit, and GM was a big part of that. Actually, right here, where today meets tomorrow, the story of the GM Technical Center, oddly enough. But anyway, that Roger Smith ruined GM in the 80s to save a freaking penny, okay? Ruined Detroit, and they have been mismanaged ever since. And remember, there's a documentary called Who Killed the Electric Car? GM killed the electric car like 40 years ago. They have bungled everything EV related to protect their what we call ICE. Okay, ICE is the internal combustion engine. And I was like, when GM took an equity stake in Nikola, I knew what I thought. Yeah, I thought they were going to shut it down. They were just going to put a bullet in its head.
Totally.
So that's why I was bearish 2 days before the Hindenburg. I didn't know anything. Stephen brought these things up. I didn't know all this shady past. I was just like, man, I went from bullish to bearish because I had concerns that truck was actually going to ship because it was amazing. Trust me, again. But I thought GM was just going to shoot him in the back of the head and the stock was going to zero. But that's why I was skeptical. So
that to me says that this is why it's so important to have an awareness of the big picture. because you're having seen the mismanagement of GM, seeing that they kind of take the cheap man's way out and they're trying to save a penny here and ruin a freaking city. That tells you, okay, if they get into bed with somebody, I am questioning now the morals of that person that's getting in bed with them. Exactly. So that tells me the macro again.
Much better put than my caveman terminology, but yeah.
Not at all. Not at all. It just, I'm just sick though that GM did that. And that's the other thing too, I think I wanted to just say is, part of the reason I wrote my book was because I wanted to show people that this constant focus on quarterly returns and this misinformation that there's beholden to the shareholders is fucked up business, excuse my French, left and right. And that's obviously what happened at GM. He was just trying to save a tiny half penny probably. And now this guy, but this is what's happened. We have now all these people who expect this. They want turnaround. They want profit immediately. Well, you can't get that. That's not how you build companies.
And I joked about this, but it won't surprise me. I mean, 5 years, and back to your whole point of, not wanting to be wrong and the ego. GM invested $2 billion in Nikola. The stock's down 50%. So basically their equity's worth half what it was 2 weeks ago. I'll go on the record. They'll spend $20 billion trying to make this deal work, as opposed to just being like, we fucked up.
We fucked up, totally.
Because they never will. They will not. They'll legal fees. This will drag on for a decade.
Correct.
Versus just being like, well, we gave $2 billion to a freaking con man.
Correct. And that's the proof that this company does not learn from its past mistakes. But that's what the ego does, right? That ego will have you go down and down and down.
And that's that bag holder mentality we talk about. Because I'll go back to, I got a question for Steven, but GM's the bag holder now, and they will defend. And and Steven, you and I, especially you with being short bias, I mean, you know this, every time you bash some stupid penny stock, your mentions light up, and GM's now the bag holder, and they'll defend that decision for a decade. But that being said, Steven, how much is this whole thing so much like a penny stock, though? I mean, like you said, with the name, they got a catchy name.
It's almost ridiculous.
Tesla, it's like the hot sector. What's the hottest sector other than the virus stuff? Second hottest sector, electric vehicles. It's a pickup. Nobody's really doing a pickup. They had this. I mean, the web page is awesome. You look at the truck, it's awesome. And then the emperor has no clothes. I mean, how much is this textbook penny stocks?
but it's exactly like a penny stock, but it's like on turbo, because a penny stock will elaborate some words in a headline of a press release, and they'll think, oh, I don't want to take the mic too much because the NASDAQ might be watching. I'm not going to push it too far, but what Nikola have done is have just gone turbo, and I think the reason they've gone so turbo in the let's not say lies, but in the manifestations of the truth, is they've hidden plain sight, because anyone who watches the commercial of the Nikola one is not going to be saying, probably pushing it down a hill, probably just pushing it down a hill. They're not going to be saying that. They're going to think, I've seen it on a TV commercial. It looks brilliant. It's got to be true. And I think there's too much trust in Wall Street, and it allows big companies with big market caps to hide in plain sight.
That's a really powerful statement. I think you're right, Stephen.
But how do we get the audience? Because imagine how much money you could have made on Nikola if you'd figured it out. How do you get the audience to figure this out? And how do you get people to learn from this lesson?
People have to become the authority of their lives. People are so wanting to surrender that authority because it's less costly, right? You don't, if you are reading books like Bad Blood, right? If you're watching in the newspaper things like GM destroying an entire city to save a couple of pennies, then you start to think for yourself, and you're like, wow, maybe all the smartest guys in the room don't have the answer. Maybe the times when everything looks so promising, we have not been taught culturally to question authority. If somebody has a doctor, before their name, or a black, a judge. Like, we think, oh, they're all the smart people, I have to listen to them, and nobody questions them. And that's why I think this happens.
But the thing is, though, and I agree with that, and the reason why is because the market rewards lies. The market rewards exaggeration.
That's a good,
lies.
man. I don't. You might have to copyright that. I don't know if I've ever. That's a good saying, and I don't know if I've ever heard that before.
I haven't heard of it. It just came to my head.
Better copyright it before this episode airs.
I am a copywriter, though. But the market rewards lies. It rewards exaggeration. It rewards bending the truth, and it especially rewards, more than anything, in Nikola's case, a full-blown made-up company story. The more made up, the higher the market cap.
Yeah.
But it rewards it until it doesn't, right? Because when you get the but it does, because once you get the expose, the CEO walks away with 20 mil.
Yep.
I don't think he will this time. I think they're not going to let that happen.
We're just so the listener knows, we're recording September 23rd. I think again, going back to the Elizabeth Holmes, Elizabeth Holmes was out on the outside for a long time, but I think the quote unquote net is closing on Mr. Milton. But you asked, how do you capitalize on this? We were talking before we went on air, Stephen was talking about real estate. I think, he knows the majority of my long-term holdings are in real estate. And, people will be like, hey, you're trading every day. All you talk about is finance, podcasts, my whole life revolves around finance, but I don't hold stocks long-term. I've got a managed 401k, but I think the moral of the story is be a trader, learn to recognize price action. Listen, Nikola was an incredible long a month ago. That thing went up every day for a month. That's right. There was a lot of money to be made there. Then the hit piece hits, and every day since the hit piece, it's red. You could have shorted it a week after the hit piece and still made money. So that's my thing. Back to Stephen's amazing quote of the market rewards lies. Recognize that and just know
exactly
that even if you think the Badger is amazing, it doesn't mean you hold for 2 years.
Correct.
So.
You're the perfect example of that, Tim, because you're saying you were interested in the truck, you wanted the truck, you thought it was awesome, but then you were willing to change. Maybe that's part of it too. Be willing to be incorrect. Be willing to change your mind. Be willing to be flexible.
That's the ultimate bag holder mentality. Again, you can have, and back to Stephen's point, you'd be amazed. Especially in like these OTC stocks. People will defend them to the death. And it's like,
weird.
You need to realize, your stock went from 1 penny to $3 to a penny. Okay. This, you need to realize that you can, and people will defend it, and people are defending Nikola today. Listen,
I'm sure,
I could probably tweet about some bashing Nikola tweet, and I probably get 10 people replying being like, oh, GM validated their technology. It's like, or whatever, or Trevor Milton was a visionary and misunderstood, or whatever. So
totally. What earlier you were saying to Stephen about how this looked so much like a penny stock, and you used the phrase a pickup. What is the pickup?
Oh, sorry. They had a electric truck. So that's why
pickup truck.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Like one of them things we got out in the country where you can like put stuff in the back, like a dead deer or some firewood or some stuff like that. I know you folks in the city ain't ever seen one of these.
There you
go. In Hawaii, people actually drive their pickup trucks with their kids in the back of the pickup, sliding all over the place, like in the rain sometimes. And when I first came here, I was horrified. I was like, New York, like, you have to have a 14 seatbelt, but it's just so I do know what a pickup is, Tim, but I thought it was a technical term.
No problem.
Just jump in, because I think we can't talk about the electric vehicle sector without talking about Tesla, and we can't talk about Tesla without talking about Battery Day, which has just popped out. And when you look at Nikola's success through lies, and you put it in direct contrast with Battery Day, Elon Musk and Tesla stock was punished because he was just telling the truth. He was punished today for telling the truth. He said, look, what we're doing is insanely hard and we are making good progress, but it's really, really, really difficult.
Yep.
Pioneering.
Yep.
And he was honest. He said, this stuff's coming, but it's not
Yeah.
yet because it's insanely hard.
Yeah.
10%. What was the drop? 10% overall? Something like that.
Saying that, that goes back to Kim and your point. I mean, it's like you go back to that quarterly statement, that short-term mindset.
Correct.
I mean, again, I think most stuff kind of goes off Elon's back, but is he like, well, geez, should I have not been so called, should I have not, should I have not told the truth? Should I have spun it around a little bit and said, because
how does that not get tempted? How do you not get tempted by that? But that's part of what I do admire about him is that he does have that sense of himself that he's like, you know what? Fuck you guys. Like, this is the truth. And this is how I'm going to build the company. And that's how he's not constantly beholden to them. And that to me is being the authority of your life. But that is hard to do. I mean, I can't imagine how many of the big investors don't call him and be like, what the hell, dude? What the hell? And hopefully he has the moxie to stand back at them and be like, dude, I'm building a long-term company here. We're not going to be profitable in 5 freaking seconds, which really the companies that do the best are not profitable in 5 freaking seconds.
Well, Amazon, Amazon is like the classic example. Amazon was the worst company in the world for 8 years, and now Bezos is the richest man in the world,
Surely the social networks as well. The social networks been profitable for years and years. But I think your common values of the leading entrepreneur, the CEO, is like the integrity and the vision. If you've got those, they'll stand you in better course longer term. These companies kind of survive, obviously. If you're spinning the truth for a quick buck, you'll come and fall.
But this was not the way business was run. And this, I have to just put a shout out to Lynn Stout, Professor Lynn Stout. She's passed on now, but she wrote a book called The Myth of Shareholder Value. It's 70 pages. It's the most powerful book. And I just wish it was forced reading in every MBA program, because MBA students to this day are being taught something that's incorrect, which was Milton Friedman saying that that you're beholden to shareholders. You're legally beholden in a company, and that is not true. It's just an incorrect interpretation because he was an economist, not an attorney. And when you read the way she puts it out, she talks that companies were not run like this before 30 years ago. That particular statement from him is what kind of threw all business in the last 30 years off the rails and created companies like Enron and these kind of companies that make these people promise things that are not actually possible. And when I read that book, I was like, oh my God, no wonder business has been so screwed up for the past 30 years.
Well, and that goes back to actually, goes back to, my quote unquote hatred of GM. So look at, to the reader at home or the listener, look into the Roger Smith era. Number one, he started in 1980. He started the gutting. He destroyed GM in 1980. I know Michael Moore, I know he can be kind of an annoying figure. Roger and Me, great documentary, must watch in my opinion. It's called Roger and Me because it's about Roger Smith and how he destroyed Flint, destroyed GM, etc. And it was all just, pennies.
Can I just leave advice for everyone? It's another saying. Question everything, especially penny stocks. That's it. That's the takeaway. Just question everything, but especially question penny stocks because of the worst of the worst of the worst are doing it.
Yep.
Exactly. And well said. And the biggest thing, and I know this might be confusing to a lot of you, but respect price action. You'll hear us say that a million times. I don't care if Trevor Milton was creating electric spaceships or I don't care, which Elon will probably do, but I don't care if he cured cancer. I don't care if he cured cancer. if the stock is red every day for 2 weeks, you need to recognize that it doesn't matter what the idea is. It doesn't matter what anybody is saying. This stock is in a long-term downtrend, and you either need to sell or short, or you need to do something. And again, I go back to Henry Kissinger and Jim Mattis, years at Theranos, completely duped by the female Steve Jobs with her fake voice,
the weird voice.
And
wait, let me try to imitate. I'm going to talk like this a little bit, Tim. Does it make me sound?
She was like
I'm
4
smarter
octaves
now?
deeper. No offense, but she.
I mean, how did she do that? That tells you. But look, even I haven't seen the gentleman who owns Nikola. I don't even want to say his name, but when you see
Tim doesn't want to
somebody
get sued.
like exactly. And, considering what you told me happened to this poor reporter, Stephen, I'm a little afraid of it. But you think about there's a certain kind of, what is it that I want to say? I saw his suit. I saw the 4-button jacket. Now, I'm not saying that I don't like a well-dressed man. I do like a well-dressed man. But you have to think about where, if somebody is an entrepreneur working around the clock and you're paying that close attention to your suits and you're under 40, that is interesting to me.
Yeah,
because every person that comes in front of me, if I'm not saying there aren't very successful, honest men well-dressed, but there's certain tells that you can look for. Certainly that situation with Elizabeth, I watched those interviews with her in the beginning before she, was kind of called out or crumbled down. And I just remember thinking something's off with this woman. Not that I thought it was a fraud. I'm not going to go that far, but I just remember listening to her voice. I didn't know she was faking her voice, looking at her sweaters, looking at how she never looked the reporters in the eyes. There were so many things that were what is off with this woman? I couldn't put my finger on it. That is you saying, Stephen, the question everything.
Which I don't know, again,
what the questions were.
We can, we've already said his name, but have either of you watched any video with him? I admit I haven't,
No, I didn't.
I just saw the pictures.
I'm just curious.
I don't want to get that
pictures.
energy.
Avoiding eye contact.
It was a couple of things. It was the 4-button cuff. It was what's that fancy ring that all the Silicon Valley guys are wearing now? It's like carbon something. What's that? Have you seen that? It's like this fancy kind of, I think it's health. It's like,
oh yeah. I know what you mean. It's a fitness tracker. I know what you mean, but yeah, I can't
it's
remember
probably a
the name.
fitness tracker
Yep.
or something. It just, in the one photograph, I saw 7 things that made me think this is a guy who knows he's in front of millions of people. And that's a different motive than somebody who's in front of them because they are working around the clock trying to build a company that to them is their vision.
Right. Which is
it's
Elon.
a good point.
Elon sleeps in the factory,
Exactly. He's not in it. Elon is not in it for the money. I'm not saying he doesn't like money or doesn't want profit, but it's the why, right? His why is transformation, is getting to space. His why is what inspires him. And I just wonder, I wasn't paying attention to this guy for Nikola before, but I just wonder, did you come away inspired from his conversations? And I never felt inspired by the Theranos woman, Elizabeth Holmes. I never felt inspired, wow, that sounds so amazing. I don't know. These are the things I look for if I'm going to do you know what I mean? It's
very important because if you don't feel it from them, it's probably because they don't have it, right? And if they don't have it, it's because the values aren't there and they're doing it for another reason. But
yeah, I have to admit, for me, I didn't even know who he was. I had no idea who he was, never saw pictures or anything till the Hindenburg report hit. I just got suckered by the demons in Stephen's industry in marketing. I just saw this really cool looking truck and I was like, whoa, 900 horsepower. Whoa. That's all I ever saw.
Totally. But I love that as soon as you started to see red flags, even though you were passionate about that truck, you were willing to pivot.
Yep. And I think that might be the biggest takeaway from today is, I've said it 6 times, but avoid that bag holder mentality. Listen, you can't know everything. I mean, I know a lot of people, especially in 2020, everyone pivots from being a constitutional lawyer to a epidemiologist to a virologist. I know in 2020, everyone's an expert in everything, foreign policy. But I mean, get away from that. I mean, listen, yes, you have a computer. Yes, you have the internet, but you can't know everything. And if you miss something, if you miss the fact that, again, this guy, again, I'm learning more and more. I didn't know he had a failed venture and got sued by Swift Trucking. Swift Trucking's one of the biggest trucking companies in the country. Yeah. I didn't know he had mistresses, and I didn't know he bought the most expensive house in Utah before with I think they had like $20,000 in sales. Okay. So I don't know if you knew that, Kim. And it was a solar. I didn't know
it's only 20.
Fact check me on this.
I heard about the house. The house, but even that's a red flag.
Let me.
$47 million house.
It was like $20,000 sales for the year, but it was a solar install at his house. Okay, that was all their sales. That was it.
Wow.
It wasn't even a truck.
So. Yeah, it's a big fraud. But
meanwhile, he's got a $25 million house with $25,000 in sales.
But Tim, you were saying though we can't know everything all of the time, right? Which is why you've got to trust price action, because price action is a reflection of everything that everybody knows at all time.
That's the hive.
That's why you have to.
Very well.
Price action is a reflection of everything, so you don't need to know everything. You just need to trust the price action, which does know everything.
Yeah.
Well, God.
Yeah.
Man.
Whose idea
was to have this guy on the podcast?
Yours.
Exactly.
I prove me worth once a year.
Might be the best trade I ever made. Was bringing Steven on the podcast. But no, great point. I mean,
copywriter, growing. So true.
Award-winning copywriter.
Because you had that price action again. Well said. Copyright that too. Trademark is what I meant to say.
All right. So explain that to me. Price action.
Again, the market is telling you when the stock is red every day. I mean, literally every day since the hit piece hit. You can't be married to your idea. So back to me. I can't be sitting here saying, "Oh man, that truck's sure cool." It's coming, man. It's awesome. No, as soon as that Hindenburg report came, I'm a trader. I'm like, screw that. Glad I didn't send him my $500 down payment. I'm like, I'm done. Now I'm back to waiting for Elon to build a truck. So
exactly. Something better looking than that scary looking thing that we saw a couple of. That was so ugly. Oh my God. And these trucks look good. I saw the Tesla truck. Those look really sexy.
Or the Nikola truck. Yeah, it's
the Nikola
awesome.
truck. Sorry, the Nikola truck.
Wait one.
They looked really sexy.
But yeah, I mean, that's a great point though, Stephen, is that you can't know everything. You can't read every article. You can't watch every video.
Nah.
You can't read every SEC filing. You can't interview Trevor. Maybe you could, but I mean, you can't visit the facility, especially, I mean, you're busy. You got a life. It's not like you can do all these things, go tour the factory or something. But when you see the stock gap down 20%, and then gap down 20%, you got to be like, man, I might not know what's going on, but somebody does. Somebody knows what's going on, and they're dumping this freaking stock.
It's absolutely it. It's absolutely it.
What's happened to GM stock?
Nothing, but again, I think, they're defending it. It's going to be interesting to see. Like I said, they're sticking up for it. They're saying, it was still a good idea. We bought the technology. We didn't buy into Trevor because I don't know if you saw, he's been fired. Okay.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
his Twitter account got locked. Then they deleted his Twitter account. So
I tried to get on his Twitter yesterday and I couldn't get on it. And I was like, what's going on?
so now
Okay,
GM is
that's
doing the spin
interesting.
where they're like, oh, well, it wasn't about him. It was about the technology. Well, and I don't want this to just to turn into a General Motors bashing podcast, but it's like, wait a minute. The whole point is they didn't have any technology. They borrowed everybody else's. They didn't have any of their own. So now what is it about? The brand? It's about the brand. Oh, he's got a great name, you know.
Brand is
after
good,
Nikola
though,
Tesla, which oddly enough, do you know
copy of Tesla though?
Do you know the one thing that Stephen and Nikola Tesla share in common?
What?
No,
They
I don't.
both
Go on.
had
This is
a
the joke of the year.
pigeon they both had a pigeon for a girlfriend.
Pigeon for a girlfriend.
Nikola Tesla was in love with a pigeon.
I think that's like a dad joke that I don't get.
Nope, it's real. It's real. It's his girl.
Pigeon?
He writes about being in love with a
you-
pigeon. The rumor is that he was such a crazy genius that he was, you know, he had no time for anything else. They say he was asexual, okay, and he had no interest in any sex, and he fell in love with a pigeon.
Yeah.
So, which is the one thing you and Stephen, him and you two share in common. So.
Sounds fantastic. I need to find the pigeon. It's funny because we're actually called girls.
She'll find you.
As well.
She'll find you.
Just give it time, Stephen. Put yourself out there.
I'll just be sitting on a park bench throwing bread, just waiting.
Exactly. I went to the Tesla Museum in Boston, and there's a sculpture of him there. That man was. I feel like he's the epitome of like having brilliance stolen left and right.
Well, Edison,
and not
remember
having,
that's part of the history too.
Right?
Edison screwed him. There's that video because Nikola Tesla was the big DC guy, the direct current guy. And obviously Edison was the AC, the alternating current guy. And there's a terrible video where Edison electrocutes an elephant, kills an elephant in front of this huge crowd with DC because he's trying to ruin. Edison basically ruined Nikola Tesla intentionally with these because he had more money and just back to like Hindenburg versus Nikola. Again that the whole Edison Nikola Tesla thing's a wild story. So
it's just it's further evidence of how history. What is it? Doesn't repeat, but it rhymes, right? So it's the ego. It's the ego constantly.
Especially in the stock market. Although it kind of doesn't these days. The market is so bullish and everything gets bought up. It's kind of crazy. But all of these high volume big green days will turn into big bag holder charts and they'll be short heaven. The cycle will rhyme in return.
Here's a beautiful way to take this home. So, Stephen, I know you weren't watching it, but I'm sure you saw SPI, right, today?
Oh, come on, of course. I nearly, can I just say with SPI, and I'll let you finish because it's mental.
Nope. I want to hear it.
Up 200%, massive volume, 30 million, up 200%, EV, opens weak. I'm like, what? Why is it opening weak? How is it just falling slowly? And I just said, I was like, talking to me, mate, I was like, watch this long, 10:30, 11, 1, 2, this is ripping. And I nearly got the double bottom on it. Do you know the first double bottom, about 10:30 or something? Just missed it. And just look now, it's at 9 or something. But
yep.
it's obviously a short trap.
So I set you up. So that was my next question. So you thought the highest price was 9, right?
God knows what it is. I'm so sad.
Take a guess.
15 or something.
Well done.
40.
A high a day of 1573.
Did I get 1573? That's absolutely nuts. It's absolutely nuts. It's brilliant.
300 million shares. It's 1:30 p.m. 8 million float.
How many million?
300.
How many million has it traded? 300. Look, like you can't so many shorts have blew up in that. So many. like you've got to look at the big picture. It doesn't matter if it's opening week. If every other indicator is bullish, the low float, the high volume,
traded 15 million shares. The opening candle was 15 million shares. This is a little tip to you out there. If you're 8 million float stock that trades 15 million shares, the first candle of the day, you're thinking about shorting that.
Yeah. Look, and if you're gonna short it, it needs to push 30% at the open, and then somehow it dies, but it won't die, but somehow. But that week open was a disgusting short.
What's my favorite low float pattern, baby? What's my favorite low float pattern?
It's like dipping week open red to green. I mean, but I was not shorting that in a million years. But that double bottom, I just missed it long. I was gutted.
Beautiful.
Did anyone get it? Did you get it, or do you know anyone who got it?
Again, we were talking through it on the podcast, and then I was recording videos. I laid out the idea, but I didn't touch it today. Just hit a new high.
I watched it and watched it go.
16, 20. So it's off to the races.
I mean, honestly, I checked my accounts twice just to make sure somehow I didn't take it. I checked my accounts. I was like, I know I didn't take it. I know I didn't, but I just have to check in case.
Oh, I've done that before, especially like on a squeeze like this, where like you look at your account, but then you go back. I'm like, I want to make sure I canceled that order.
No, but I didn't even borrow the shares, but I'm just so scared of such a crazy thing. I didn't even reserve.
So is that great that you saw this?
Whoops, sorry, go ahead.
Is that great? Did Steven see what you were hoping he would have seen with that, Tim?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, again, Steven.
Yeah, I've been burnt enough times to know.
This is that story I tell over and over again. Is I know especially on my social media, I bash people that short these stocks. I don't bash everybody that shorts these stocks. I bash the people that are noobs that don't realize that this. I mean, it opened at $3.50, Kim, and it just went to $16. I mean. That's it's up 1,400% on the day. I mean, if you shorted that with a small account, you're done. I mean, you are done in a couple hours. So I just bash the newbies, Steven, our favorite guy whose name we will not mention was famous for shorting stuff like this. And, and now he's homeless, it's like, but I mean, it's just, you got to be so careful. Now, Steven knows. Yeah. He said, he's like, man, this doesn't look right. He saw that first 5-minute candle. He's like, whoa, this doesn't smell right. Yeah.
Look, I was a no-go when I saw EV perking in the morning. When EV was running in the morning, I was like, I'm not even touching EV running on that volume. I'm not even attempting it.
That's awesome.
Although the EV sector's turning a bit, but it marks the transformation though, because for me, Tim, do you remember when you say, Stephen, you just short anything that's up? And it's funny because it's true.
Yep.
3 years ago, anything over 25%.
It was true.
Was true.
That's the past.
Anything above 25%. Anything above 25%. I used to say I'll short the push because if it keeps going, I'll just get out. But if it drops and then doesn't break down, I'll just get out, break even. In your head, it kind of works as a strategy, right? And then you had stuff like Kodak just going 30% at the open and stuff like that. And I'm like, I'm not doing this strategy no more.
Well, we might have one live right now. I mean, SPI, literally might do it right now. I mean,
really?
It just hit 17, Steven. So it's up $2 a share since we started talking about it. So
have you seen 1,400% up on the day? That's not a reverse split. Have you seen a stock go 1,400?
Here comes 18. There's 1,750. So
what?
1,500% right there. Yeah.
Oh.
Have you seen it before? Have you ever seen that before? Not a reverse split.
I don't know if I've seen 1,500. I still remember. Nah. I remember 1,000% moves. I don't know if I remember 1,500 though. I mean, that's.
Well, what was Dries from 5 to 100? What's 5 to 100 for Dries? That must be a few thousand%, is it?
Yeah, but it did it over a couple days too.
Yeah, so went 5 to 50 and 50,
SPI has gone from $1 to now 1868 in one day.
What? What?
So
there you go. It'll be a good short at some point, but I wouldn't even take it ever. I wouldn't even take it ever. I wouldn't even take it ever as a short.
I sense
Never,
that's
ever,
some
ever.
kind of sophistication now in you, Stephen. I just have that feeling that something.
There's easier plays.
It's
There's
the fact that he
easier
combed
plays.
his hair today. That's what it is.
But do you know what I like? Do you know what my first thought was when I saw SPI? I thought, brilliant. Every other short's going to be easier now because all of the attention is on that stock.
Wow.
Whenever I see a good stock
Yeah.
running in the morning,
Yeah.
it makes your chances of all of the other shorts 50% easier.
That's a
That's
great
awesome.
tip. you know.
Idiot Robin Hooders, idiots
That is.
buying me shorts.
And MNOV is a great example of that.
That
You
was me
shorted it.
short.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was me short.
And it's on the low of the day
8%.
right now, and it's barely holding on to green. I mean, so that's a great tip, and I want to let Kim take us out here, but that's avoid that insane one and focus on the layups and again, it's at 6, Stephen. If I remember right, you shorted like 7, and it's at the low of the day, and it might go red, and it probably gaps down tomorrow. So,
Wow.
Yeah, hit nearly the
That's
top.
awesome.
Yeah.
so Kim,
Trading's going back.
what I'd
Okay.
like you to finish on is,
Okay.
what's your, again, talking about the ego, talking about this, emperor with no clothes. What's your number one tip for people that, I hate to use me as an example, but going back to Nikola, I mean, it did not bother me one bit to go from literally, I was going to pre-order the thing. It's like, I was getting ready to now I don't care. And in minutes, I didn't care,
Yeah.
And how do you, what's your
Because
tip
your
for people
identity.
that fall in love with these ideas and stuff,
Because your identity is, Tim, your identity is not wrapped up in that choice, and I think that's what happens. We can get our identity hooked up to people, to things, to beliefs. We feel like that belief becomes our identity. That item that I'm investing in, that trade is your identity, reflects whether you are worthy or not worthy. So I would say, don't allow your identity to get mixed up in your trades or your sense of worthiness. And also, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is.
Fair enough. So I will take us home. And Stephen, 1950, it just hit. So I think it's up $4 a share.
And I have to take a quick look at this.
It's up $4 a share since we started talking about it 5 minutes ago. So, all right, everyone.
If we were live,
330
I'd say it was us that did
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're pumping the stock.
You know what it is, though?
So
that's going to come down to the 13s, there. That's coming down to about the 13s.
but I mean,
Parabolic.
after everyone's dead.
Squeezed out. Yeah.
Because I mean,
20 is a good rejection.
Yeah. But
20 is a
again,
good rejection
it doesn't
number.
matter. There's 20, right? There's 20.
Look, it's going through. It's going.
It doesn't matter if you're dead, if you're right. It's like I was right.
It's through 20.
But you're in the ground. Doesn't matter. So, all right, everyone. Thank you again. This is the power of short squeezes. We got a little off topic at the end, but it's a hot sector. They pumped out the press release. It's a low float stock. The volume was there early. There's many things you can do with these type of moves. Number one, you can just avoid them. Nothing wrong with that. But man, when you see that volume, especially at the open, like Steven saw that red flag, and he knew that was a little bit of baiting because the volume was too high relative to the price action. It's like what's going on here. So learn to recognize that, and when you see that, please don't short these. And then on the vice versa side, look to go long these. I mean, there's yes, you're not going to buy at 3 and sell at 20, but maybe you buy at 5 and sell at 6, and with a small account, it's a good day. So, and then also as Kim said, if you're bag holding a stock, if you're long-term believer, especially in low price stocks, recognize that these things, no penny stock succeeds. There's been like 2 in the history of mankind that have succeeded. Now they're great trades, but don't fall into that and don't get yourself too tied up in the idea. And again, I'm not trying to make it sound like I'm so wise or something, but it didn't bother me one bit to give up on Nikola when I was confronted with the news. You know, it's like that cheating boyfriend or girlfriend. It's amazing to me the people that stay in these terrible relationships because they don't want to accept the fact that they caught him cheating twice or something. You know, it's like, be willing to move on. There's a million stocks out there. There's a million fish out there. In Steven's case, there's a million pigeons out there. Him and Nikola Tesla. So that being said, have a great day, everyone. Be sure to head over to SteadyTrade.com. I'm sure they'll link up. Hopefully they'll corroborate my Edison electrocuting an elephant in my pigeon story. Hopefully, otherwise, #fake news, and we'll see you the next time.